My grandfather grew up in Stockholm. He was actually born in 1900, and then he worked on tour ships, and he ended up in Melbourne in 1924, I think it was, and that's where he stayed. He actually never went back to Stockholm or to Sweden. So he is a boat person. There was one relative who wrote to us every Christmas from when I was born, so I didn't actually get to Sweden until I was 26, so for 26 years he wrote a letter every year. So he was a connection, and when I went to Stockholm for the first time, I met him, but also a wider range of family, who by coincidence weren't classical musicians, but were folk musicians and sang in choirs.
I grew up in a small country town in the beautiful province of Småland. Småland is famous for IKEA glassware like Smörgåsbord, oriflamme. Music though wasn't very big in my country town, but there was one teacher who taught several instruments, and one of them was guitar.
We met in Sydney in 1986, but that was just before I was to go to Europe for 3 years. And then when I got back, we started playing together and have been playing together for 25 years.
Anyone who plays classical guitar will sooner or later come across music transcribed from the lute to classical guitar. I thought, I wonder what this really sounded like in Shakespeare's time. As soon as I had a chance, I put in an order for a lute from a Swedish lute maker and started teaching myself the lute. For a while I played classical guitar and lute side by side, but sooner or later I think you have to make a choice, because classical guitar you play with fingernails and the technique is quite different for the right hand, while the lute is usually played with the fingertips. So in 1983 I cut my nails off and became a lutenist. Roman was considered to be the father of Swedish music. Now, Swedish Baroque is probably not that well known even to Swedes. We tend to listen to Handel and Bach and Vivaldi like everyone else. But he was quite an important composer. He went to London to study. He played second fiddle in Handel's orchestra for his operas. And he brought back a lot of experience and music to the Swedish court. This had a big influence on the music scene in Sweden, and I think it developed the whole scene much further.
The Marais Suite is probably the first recording of its kind in Australia. It's a trio sonata, which is different to the other Marais we've recorded in the previous CDs, in the fact that there's a violin and a flute who have the main part, they have the main tunes, and it's accompanied by a continuo with the oboe and the gamba. So for once I'm in the background, and the violin and all the other instruments are more important. Sometimes the flute has the melody, sometimes the violin have the melody, and it's supported by the bass line, which is really, really well written. It's just a beautiful piece of music, and like in all of Marais' suites, there's a beautiful saraband, gorgeous saraband.
Carl Michael Bellman was probably at the center of Swedish culture, or is at the center of Swedish culture, I should say. There's probably no one in Sweden who can't recite at least one of his songs or sing one of his songs. I felt that it would be really nice to arrange his music in a Baroque concept. The first song is about striking up the fiddle and playing at celebration. You drink lots of wine, and that suited the violin.
For quite some years now, our family, as a family, have gone to jazz concerts. Some families go to football, we go to jazz concerts. And about 6 years ago, the Sydney Festival brought out a Swedish jazz trio, e.s.t, and we went along and were just spellbound by the music. And just hearing this music, I could actually hear that this music would actually work on old instruments or on the instruments we play. In fact, the piece that Tommie arranged is a pavane, which is actually a court dance of the 16th and 17th century.
The pianist in e.s.t, Esbjörn Svensson, was a fantastic jazz pianist, but he died in a diving accident some years ago, just like another Swedish great jazz pianist, Jan Johansson, who died in the 60s in a traffic accident. Both taken very young and both brilliant musicians. Swedish folk music didn't really mean a lot to me when I grew up. It was something that old men did with playing violins out of tune, and it wasn't very interesting. But when I studied at the conservatorium, I got involved with musicians who played Swedish folk music, and I discovered that there is a whole treasure of music there. It's amazing how rich the music is. Swedish folk music is usually played on the violin. The fiddlers use tempered notes that are not that you couldn't find on the piano. They're sort of in between the keys on the piano, to make it really interesting, like something that you also find in Middle Eastern music when you play the oud, for instance. you don't have any frets, so you can do all kinds of tempered notes. There's also the nyckelharpa, which is like a bowed hurdy-gurdy type instrument, which has been used for a long time in Swedish music too. There's even a Swedish bagpipe. I think the last bagpipe player died in 1949 or something like that. But it's been taken up again, and there's several really good bagpipes players around, and I've even done some lute and bagpipe duets. It's a very soft, gentle bagpipe, this one, not like the Scottish one. The folk music suite of, I think it is one walking tune, one folk song and 2 polskas, are all pieces that I played a lot. They're sort of my favorite pieces from when I lived in Sweden and played there. So it was sort of a project that was very close to my heart to arrange this music, and I thought it would be really nice to arrange them in the Baroque idiom to see what happened and how it would work, and I'm very pleased with how it does work.
Playing with Tommy for 25 years, I thought it was time that we actually got together and did a Swedish program. It was a good way of just sharing our heritage with Tom and my heritage with the music goers in Sydney.
When we recorded this in the studio, I was very interested to hear what the result would be of my arrangements. I had of course heard them when we rehearsed, but to actually hear them recorded was a different experience, and I really loved the result. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm really happy with the people who recorded it, all wonderful musicians.
I hope listeners will take away with them some joy of what we experienced when we were making the CD. It's a really joyous CD. In fact, it puts a smile on my face when I listen to the music.
I think that if you know Swedish folk music at all, you probably feel like, that's nice, I really like this. If you never heard Swedish music before, you'd probably be surprised by how evocative and heartfelt the music is, and how beautiful it is, so you will be in for a treat. I felt that you couldn't really do a Swedish CD, and especially considering this anniversary, without maybe a Baroque version of an ABBA song. So I won't tell you which one it is. You have to buy the CD to find out. But it will be a bit of a surprise. Här är lite av min favoritmusik av svensk musik. Inspelad i Sydney för er i Sverige.